Thank you so much for meeting with me virtually today. My name is Jordan, and I'm a social worker at the Thor Recovery Center. I provide support to those we serve by facilitating opportunities and resources that will aid them on their recovery journey. The Thor Recovery Center is an accredited nonprofit treatment center for those with substance use disorders. And today we have Leslie here with us from the Lloydminster Interval Home. Her position is the public education facilitator. So the Lloydminster Interval Home Society is a dynamic organization that is passionately dedicated to developing lifetimes of well-being and healthy relationships for all. The Lloydminster Interval Home Society exists to provide safety, support, and education by empowering the children, youth, adults, and communities we serve. The Lloydminster Interval Home Society also holds the fundamental belief that every individual can reach her or his potential, that all individuals have the capacity to grow and change, and that we must have a shared hope for an abuse-free society. So once again, thank you, Leslie, for joining me today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. It's nice to finally kind of get to connect face to face, sort of.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, in what we
I'll take it.
Like right now. Yeah, exactly. So we'll just jump right into it, Leslie.
Sounds good.
So what is the relationship that the Interval Home has with the Thorpe Recovery Center?
So we've had a long-standing relationship with the Thor Recovery Center. We support many of the same individuals. We've definitely made referrals to the Thor Recovery Center, as well as supported clients that have needed a safe place after, or programming as well. In the last 5+ years, we've had the fantastic opportunity to partner with the Thorpe to offer relationship violence presentations to both the men's and women's group on a 6-week rotation. It's been very, very well received, lots of positive feedback, and it's a great opportunity to educate, whether it's pertaining to the individual listening to the presentation, or whether it's new information that they can support someone going forward if they are experiencing violence, family violence, relationship violence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I really like that you mentioned that too, because oftentimes we have clients who say, oh, like this doesn't relate to me. Like, do I really need to attend this session? And it's like, if it hasn't affected you personally, this is still information that is important for you to have in case you have a family or a friend or just anyone who might be struggling with relationship violence in general.
Absolutely, because we all have a role to play in prevention.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess like the first step really in playing in that prevention is understanding what relationship violence is and how it can manifest into people's lives without us even recognizing it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the partnership there, that's been one of the best things that I have found when I was first starting here at Thorpe and getting to connect with outside agencies and stuff. I was like, the Interval Home, like, yes, like this is such important information. And yeah, like you said, it's the number one thing in regards to prevention, and is first recognizing the information and how you can support people who are going through situations like that.
Yes, and often the feedback that we receive is that, it's information that I didn't know. I didn't know about all those different types of abuse. I didn't know where to go for support or help. I wish someone had told me this when I was a child.
Exactly.
So those are pretty impactful comments and feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it's important for our clients here because sometimes in the presentations, they might realize in that moment, like, oh my goodness, I'm in an abusive relationship, or I know someone who is dealing with this right now. Like, so it can bring up a lot of those feelings, which is, I feel like this is the best place for that to happen because they have that support, right? To deal with those triggers and deal with some of those traumas that kind of unfold too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long has the Interval Home been in service, and are you guys a nonprofit organization?
So we are a nonprofit organization. We are in our 40th year. So our 41st year now, I guess, kind of with a pandemic, lost a little bit of time there. Yeah. So we're just entering our 41st year of operations. Wow. We started in 1980, just as a little small need in the community with much growth during that time.
Right. Yeah.
It's actually pretty interesting to see the timeline of where we were and where we started and where we are now, and it's
Totally.
pretty fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's one of the most amazing things. Like, yeah, you guys have been in service for 41 years, and just to think of like how far you guys have progressed and all the work that you're doing now, like working like, because the interval home is now what's that word, with the youth center.
Amalgamated, yeah.
Thank you. I knew that you'd be able to pronounce it and not me. So and I think like too, connecting with the youth center too is a huge part of it, right? Because that's that community piece too.
Absolutely. And it's all about, promoting those healthy relationships, and what a fantastic place to start with youth, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, definitely a great connection, the youth center and the interval home.
Yeah,
that amalgamation.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah. So how has your guys' programming changed due to COVID?
Yeah, so of course we had to adapt, and we wanted to still meet the needs of the community, still be able to provide that support. So of course, at the beginning, trying to figure out how we were going to do that, especially with some of our programs that are very in the public, lots of in-person things. So the emergency shelter remained open throughout the course of the pandemic. Our transitional housing program, so Dalmar Manor, remained open throughout the course of the pandemic. The Lloydminster Community Youth Center, we did have a short time where we did close our doors. We've been open since I believe May again, and with restrictions in place and just limited capacity. So we just can't have the normal amount of youth in the building, but we still are offering programming, still very strict safety measures in place. Those programs are all still running. We definitely adapted our community-based programming. So our self-empowerment for women, our Strength to Change Men's program, our family violence outreach services, all are still going ahead. They're still full, but they are virtual. So family violence outreach, there is still the option to meet in person, because there are some women that just, it works better. They're more comfortable meeting in person. So we once again would have safety measures in place, but lots have chosen to continue with the virtual means. So, which is great. I mean, we had to get creative, especially with public ed, my role as well. It's lots community-based, lots of travel. So right now it's a lot spending time in front of the computer, but we're still continuing to do what we do, just finding creative ways to do it. So
totally, just having to adapt to what is accessible, what is feasible right now due to the COVID restrictions.
Absolutely. And we're so much further ahead than we were a year ago, right? It seems so difficult and tough, and how are we going to do these things? And then you get going with it and you realize we can adapt. We can still do good work in the community.
Exactly.
Just with some changes.
Yeah, 100%. It might not look like what it originally was, but you're still offering those services, right? That people are still accessing, which is awesome to see, especially because there is people who don't like doing the virtual thing too, right? But
absolutely,
at least they have that option at the same time. Yeah.
Oh, and I guess one other thing I should say is that we did add on our website a chat feature. Just at the beginning of the pandemic, we did see a decrease in the number of calls on our crisis and support line, a decrease in the number of women wanting to stay at the shelter or calling, and that has to do with being in the home, not being able to make that phone call. So they may have had a little bit more access to a chat feature on. So we did add that, and we did see an increase for a short time until things started to open back up. So there is that option now as well for support.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially because it provides that safety piece a bit more, right? Like exactly how you mentioned that, women might be at home and they don't have that opportunity to make that call, or they don't feel safe in doing so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are the requirements for people to enter your programming? And I know that you've mentioned kind of a lot of different programming that you guys do as well. But maybe just, yeah, like the requirements, if there's any overall that you can speak to at all?
So for the emergency shelter and our transitional housing program, we provide residential services to women and children, so women with or without children who are leaving relationship violence or family violence over the age of 18. So
Right.
though there is that 18 adult age for the most part. There are exceptions to, depending on the situation and
Yeah.
working with other community agencies, but the age of 18, as well as our community programs, so our family
Okay.
violence outreach services, and the other community programs that we do offer.
Gotcha. And are there any expectations when it comes to their programming that you look for in your guys' clients?
So we want individuals to participate in a positive way.
Right.
Some of our program participants are self-referrals. They, are interested in taking the program. They need that extra support,
Right.
need some information. Sometimes referrals come from community agencies and they may not necessarily have referred themselves to,
Right.
So just being a positive participant.
Yeah.
And the other thing we want individuals to participate in the program, not using while they're participating in these sessions. So,
Right.
Sober during those times.
Yeah, which completely makes sense too, because for someone who is in recovery or isn't in recovery yet, their mindset might not be at that place where they can fully take in all that information and, do what they need to with that.
Absolutely. And we want to make it a positive experience for everyone that is participating, right? Because, they are talking about things, they're covering a lot of topics, they're learning about, family dynamics, and they're learning about what healthy relationship looks like and the different types of violence, right? Yeah. So it's heavy content and heavy material, and we want individuals to be able to absorb that information, learn, and in a positive way and a good experience.
Yeah, that totally makes sense for sure. Yeah. Are there any preconceived barriers for your programming that potential clients should not be concerned about?
So I think, there's lots of misconceptions or barriers, more historically wise through our organization. We're here to help individuals navigate. We will meet them where they are at.
Yeah.
We are much more trauma aware than we were 10 years ago, even. Right. We're constantly learning, more education, just really understanding and meeting the individuals we're supporting where they are at.
Right.
So that might be they need to come to the shelter and they need a safe place to go or to stay. But it could also mean that they don't necessarily want to admit to the shelter or seek out transitional housing. They might just need support in the community. So that's where like family violence outreach services is fantastic, because it's a community-based program that individuals can self-refer, right? Another big, I think, misconception is in the past, we were a zero tolerance shelter. So if an individual had alcohol or drugs at all, we would not admit them to the shelter. Right. That has changed. We, once again, going back to that, trying to create less barriers for the individuals seeking help or seeking support. Yeah. So it's weighed for each unique situation, circumstance, and we look at the risk to self and risk to others, because our shelter does have children staying there as well, and we want to make sure everyone is safe. And in saying that, maybe at that time that they call for admission, they don't meet the admission criteria. There's a safety concern or a safety risk at that time. Right. It doesn't mean that we can't support them in other ways. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that they can't call back the next day and reevaluate. So I think that's one of a barrier that we still sometimes hear, but we are no longer a zero tolerance shelter. Each situation, the staff at the shelter would assess, and once again, that risk to self, risk to others, and then go from there. But once again, it doesn't mean that we can't support them in other ways. There's still the option of our 24-hour crisis and support line. Yeah. There's still referring them to another community organization or service that might help support them.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's still those options for them, regardless
Yes.
if that's what they were seeking or not. If they were seeking something specific, they still have other options, different avenues that they could go down for sure.
Absolutely. And that's why, partnerships with other organizations and being aware of the services and supports in your community so that you can best meet the needs of the individuals you are helping.
Exactly. Yeah. And it sounds like you guys take a very like person-centered approach too. Like how you said you used to be zero tolerance. Yeah. Zero tolerance. But now you guys are kind of like taking it case by case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, and that's awesome too. And I feel like that also kind of goes back to like we're not putting everybody in a box too, right? Like we're assessing each person based on their own individual needs, like what's happening for them, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just assessing that safety. Safety is most
Exactly.
important for everyone that's there, right? It's physical and emotional safety that we want to make sure that everyone that is accessing our services, they feel supported, they feel safe, right? So looking at that.
Yeah, especially that safety piece, right? Like when women and their children come to the shelter, like that's their temporary home, and like for them to be able to do the work that they need to while they're there, they need to feel safe and supported. So I think it makes total sense why you guys have to evaluate case by case and see like, is this in for the safety of everybody here too, and not this individual.
Exactly. And just and if it isn't at that time, then our support staff will support that client that support that individual where they are at, and it doesn't mean that we aren't going to continue helping that individual. There's that advocacy, there's that referrals, there's connecting them to the appropriate agency or the appropriate support that they need.
Yeah, exactly. And it just starts to get that ball rolling too, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome. And so with your guys' programming, do you have wellness plans, and if so, what are they?
So we are, all of our programs are really there to help people move forward into a life free of abuse and violence. We support individuals to move from unsafe to safe situations. Our programs offer an opportunity to, for change, for hope. We just recently changed our tagline. We give hope a space to grow, right? So to encompass all the programs and supports and services we offer, right? We have the emergency shelter, we have transitional housing, which is, longer term support for up to a year. We have self-empowerment for women program, phase 1 and phase 2. We have our strength to change men's program for men who struggle with abusive behaviors in their relationship. So all of those programming, help push towards healthy relationships, healthy living, and ultimately wellness, right?
Exactly.
And our supports are definitely an option as well for those individuals, that may be leaving treatment and need a safe place to stay, or need to, they can't go back to where they were living pre-treatment because it's not healthy or not safe, or, there may be family violence or relationship violence happening there as well. So so there's definitely options there for supporting individuals.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to point out one thing that you mentioned as well, because I feel like that this can also be like a preconceived notion, like that you guys are a women's shelter, so you only provide services and supports to women. But as you just mentioned, you have like a group for men where they can learn about abusive behaviors and how to kind of work on those too.
Absolutely. Yeah, our Strength to Change program's been around for a long time. It's definitely a great option for those individuals that want to make a change or are needing to make a change towards an abuse-free lifestyle. We also are a crisis and support line. If a male was experiencing family violence, we don't provide residential services, but we would refer to, there are a few shelters in Alberta that will accommodate men and men and their children that are experiencing violence as well. So we would, make those referrals, but anyone can call the crisis and support line that is experiencing abuse in their relationship, no matter of gender.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that too. And I just really wanted to emphasize that, just because I do know, and I've heard it from clients, I've heard it from other people outside of Thorpe as well, that they just assume that because it's a women's shelter, they strictly only provide services and support to women, but that's not the case.
Yeah, you don't need to stay at a women's shelter to access support from a shelter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, Leslie, I just wanted to kind of open it up here. If there's anything that we didn't mention that you would like to talk about before we close up here.
I guess just if anyone ever has questions, wants more information, our website is a fantastic resource. It's been updated. We're constantly adding and updating information on there. There's a list of all of our programs on there. So, and who to contact, where to call. If individuals are interested in any of our programs, they could just call the shelter, and there's a list. We'll connect them with the facilitator when interviews are ready to start and the next group is ready, session is ready to go. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so just always just connect with the shelter. If there's a question, you're not sure where to go, who to call, what to do next, we're here to help.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of how you mentioned, you guys have your website. So would that be kind of the main place where people should go to get information, get contact numbers for you guys? Yeah,
so it's just www.intervalhome.org. There's links to other organizations. There's links to resources for information. There's information on abuse. There's information on all of our programs, as well as the Lloydminster Community Youth Center. So yeah, it's a great tool. And once again, we're just, constantly trying to update that information, keep it current, because I know often people, that's their first place to go. Yeah. And our crisis and support line, which is 24 hours a day at 780-875-0966. Anyone can call that line for support, for information, and our support staff will be more than happy to help you with that, anything you might need.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll be able to link the website and all your guys' contact information in this interview as well, so it's easily accessible for anyone who might stumble upon this interview.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but I just want to take a moment and thank you, Leslie, again for coming on here and for joining in on this segment, Coffee with Our Community Connections during COVID. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and as you know, like I used to work at the Interval Home during my summers while I was going to school, so the Interval Home definitely has a special place in my heart and always will.
Yeah, we really appreciate the opportunity to share about the supports and services that we offer and some information, and definitely be part of this little partnership here.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much again, Leslie.
Thank you.